What is going on, everyone? How are you all doing today? Hope you guys are doing fantastic as always. As you can tell by the title of today's video, I am super excited to show off the first official mod on my F82 M4. And you guys already know, you guys already saw the visual comparisons. I got a set of Swift Sport Spec R lowering springs for this F82, and they are pretty dang sweet. Without wasting any more time, let's get straight into the specs and how these springs feel on the car. So obviously you guys can see the visual comparison. They definitely provided a very tasteful and modest drop to this car, enough to close out the hideous wheel gap that these M4s and M3s come with from factory. But at the same time, it's not slammed, it's not anything over the top, and it's a very functional low. For one, you have a reduced center of gravity, which obviously is going to help with the handling tremendously of the car. And on top of that, these sport springs are a lot stiffer than the factory springs, and paired with the non-adaptive dampers that this car has, it is a very, very firm ride. Very firm. If you're somebody that's looking to daily your F80 or F82 and you have the non-adaptive dampers on these cars, the suspension is already really stiff from factory, and these springs, well, I guess you could say they are compliant. They are definitely even more stiff than the factory suspension, and overall the ride is very, very firm. It's not jarring to the point where you're gonna feel like super uncomfortable every time you go over a bump, but for the most part, you know, if you live in an area with a lot of potholes and a lot of like rough road, this may not be the best setup to go with. For me, I'm looking for something very performance oriented, and because I will be tracking this car in the future, the Swift springs were definitely the route to go. Now, the company Swift springs themselves, they build a lot of lowering spring kits for cars, and a lot of people actually pair their spring sets with coilover kits as well. And what's really nice is that these are linear springs. So whereas a lot of other spring manufacturers use progressive rates on the springs themselves, these are linear. And progressive spring rates basically mean that as the spring rate compresses, so when you enter into a corner and obviously the spring takes increased load, the spring rate itself will stiffen up as it gets compressed further. But with linear springs, the spring rate is the same throughout the amount of compression, if that makes sense. I know that wasn't the best explanation, but for a track scenario and for a performance-oriented setup, it's definitely the way to go. The Sport Spec R springs that I have on my car lower the front of the F82 by about 1.1 inches, and they lower the rear by about 0.9 inches. So like I said, it's a very subtle drop. I don't really scrape or anything, but because I have the carbon fiber and performance style front lip and splitters on the front of the car, that definitely hangs pretty low. So I got to take bumps and stuff at an angle, and I have to go very slow. But aside from that, you know, there's no like bottoming out or weird issues with the springs at all. And you also don't have to cut the factory bump stops like with a lot of other lowering spring kits, which is pretty cool. Now, I'll go ahead and post the actual spring rates right up here at the top of the screen. But in terms of the frontal spring rates, you're looking at about a 50% increase in the spring rate firmness. And in the rear, you're looking at about a 25% increase. Now with the F80 M3, it's a little bit different. The M4 suspension geometry and suspension setup is a little bit different out the box. And so that's why the Sport Spec R springs that Swift makes are a little bit different between the F80 and F82 body styles. However, overall, I really, really am impressed with this kit. The body roll has been significantly reduced and the car feels properly firm. It definitely feels like a sports car should. And on top of that, you can really take turns very, very high speeds, and you don't feel like you're losing confidence. You don't feel like there's anything major that the chassis is doing that's inhibiting you from driving fast. Now I'm realizing, well, if I go fast into a turn and I want to exit and basically handle the car to its fullest, my tires are my biggest limiting factor. So not necessarily the suspension, it's actually pretty dang good out the box. And then like I said, with these springs added onto the factory dampers, it's a really, really nice setup. I think next up, I'll probably be adding some ground control camber plates to the front just to get the camber dialed in as best as I can. And now it's definitely time for some wheel spacers and probably a stud conversion kit as well. Fix the fitment, fix up the overall stance, and make everything look perfect. Here here I am taking some turns, and it feels really good. It feels very, very planted. Like I said, the lower ride height especially, not only does it look so much better, but it really feels a lot better in terms of the suspension and reduced body roll. And I was reading that some people were saying the Swift setups feel kind of bouncy because of the increased firmness on the springs themselves. I wouldn't necessarily say these springs feel bouncy at all, but I think due to the firmer spring rates themselves, you definitely feel more of a rigidness inside the chassis, as well as just the overall feel of the car. But from a performance standpoint and context, that's kind of what you want. You want a very solid feeling car, and when you're taking turns, when you're going fast, etc., like I've been saying, you know, that's definitely the setup that you should be going for. And these springs definitely provide it. You know, for just a set of lowering springs, they're like $315 brand new. It's a lot of value for the money, in my opinion, and it's definitely a must-have mod. So overall, this car looks freaking sick now that it's lowered. It looks so beautiful, paired with just some of the carbon fiber accents that I've had on the car. As you might be able to tell, I also added some minor cosmetic enhancing goodies towards the front end of the vehicle as well. And overall, I'm really happy. I'll be showing those off in a future video. So if you guys could leave a thumbs up as well as subscribe to the channel down below, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Subscribe for this F82 build and tons of other awesome automotive content. I'll catch you all in the next one. Take it easy.